Assalamu alaikum. Today we're going to be talking about the HLA system markers of self. My name is Ms. Saja Sidaw. In this video we will list 3 types of grafts, name the system the graft success depends on, and differentiate between the types of grafts. Let's review from last lesson. This is a cell. On the outside of the cell, we have something called HLA molecules. They're special markers found on the surface of nucleated cells. So, self is a set of molecules specific to an individual, and as we said now, they're found on the surface of nucleated cells. The HLA system, or human leukocyte antigen system, are genetically determined molecules found on the surface of nucleated self. Non-self are molecules or cells that are recognized by the body by being different from cells. Finally, antigens, they are substances that are recognized by the immune system as being foreign. So, antigens are non-self. Let's take this problem situation. Sammy was present in a house fire and was severely burnt. To aid his recovery, the doctor performed an operation where he took part of his healthy skin and placed it on areas in his body that were most affected. So what they did, the doctor took part of his healthy skin, he placed it in a special machine called a mesh where the surface area of the healthy skin became larger because it was meshed. And they took this healthy skin and they placed it on the areas that were most affected. You can see the mesh here. You can see how the skin looked here. It was one part, okay, and it had no mesh, so it was small. Here, after it was meshed, meaning that they increased the area by creating little holes in it. So they increased the surface area. So, grafting is a tissue or an organ transferred from one side to another. So, very much like what the doctor did for Sammy. He took a piece of skin from his leg, for example, and he placed it in another place that was affected by the fire. For example, let's say that this is his arm, so they took one piece of skin, healthy skin from his leg, and they placed it in another place in his body, for example, his arm that was affected. This is a graft. So a graft is when we take a tissue or an organ and we transfer it from one place, one side to another. Read the following statements and choose the correct one. A. The HLA is the same in the healthy skin and the burnt skin, so the transplant will succeed. Or B, the HLA is different between the healthy skin and the burnt skin, so the transplant will fail. Now, it's very important to remember that HLA is the same on the surface of nucleated cells in the same individual. So, since Sammy was affected by the fire, they took part of his healthy skin having HLA molecules and they replaced the burnt skin having the same HLA molecules. So the correct answer would be A, since HLA molecules are the same for the same individual. This type of graft is called an autograft. So in the case of Sammy, the skin graft performed to aid Sammy's recovery will succeed since the skin tissue of the same person has identical HLA molecules, meaning that the body would identify it as self. So an autograft is a graft from the same person. So it's when we take tissue or organs and we transfer them from one side to another in the same person. Let's take this second problem situation. Malak suffers from kidney failure. Her identical twin sister Sarah donates a kidney. The transplant succeeds. So there are 2 girls, they are identical twins, meaning that they look exactly the same. Sarah gave her sister a kidney and the transplant succeeds. Let's see what happened. So this is Sarah. She is the donor. Donor means she is the one that will give her sister a kidney, and Malak is the recipient, which means that she is the one who is receiving the kidney. As you can see, Malak has damaged kidneys and she needs a new kidney. Now usually when they transplant a kidney, they place it over here. So they took one kidney from Sarah and they gave it to Malak, and they told us that this transplant succeeded, means that it worked. Let's choose the best statement. Malak and Sarah have similar HLA markers since the transplant succeeded. So Malak and Sarah, they have similar HLA molecules. Or do Malak and Sarah have different HLA molecules, but since they are sisters, the transplant must succeed? Now the answer is A. Remember, HLA markers, they are like identification cards found on the surface of nucleated cells. So since the transplant succeeded, that means that Sarah and Malak have similar HLA molecules. Because even if people are related, that does not mean that they will have similar HLA molecules, meaning that transplants are not necessarily accepted. So this type of graft is called an isograft. So since the kidney transplant, meaning the graft, succeeded in identical twins, that means that they have similar HLA molecules. So this is called isograft, and it's a graft. Remember, graft is tissue or organs transformed from one side to another. In this case of the isograft, it's transferred between identical twins. So when we talk about isograft, we're talking about grafts between identical twins. Let's take the next problem situation. Muhammad suffers from kidney disease. He receives a kidney transplant from a stranger. After a short while, the doctor discovered that the graft transplant failed. So we have a kidney transplant, again like we saw in the previous image, but this time the transplant did not succeed. It was rejected by the body. Why do you think it was rejected by the body? So choose the best statement. The kidney transplant failed because the graft was from a stranger, or the kidney transplant failed since the recipient, meaning the person receiving the kidney, in this case Muhammad, and the donor, which is the stranger, had different HLA molecules. The answer is B. It's because, remember, if a person is given cells that have different HLA molecules, the body will see them as foreign, non-self, and therefore it will reject it. This is called allograft. Allograft meaning that the recipient and the donor, meaning the person receiving the transplant, and the donor, the person giving the transplant, have different HLA molecules, meaning that the body will identify it as non-self. This is called allograft, and it's rejected between one individual and another. So usually allograft, they are rejected. So the types of grafts that we learned about today are autograft. Remember, autograft is a graft within the same person, so from one location in the body to another. The second graft that we learned about is the isograft. Remember, isograft is giving a graft between identical twins. Usually this type of graft succeeds. And finally, the third type of graft that we learned about today is the allograft. Allograft is transferring grafts between two different people that have different HLA molecules. This graft is usually rejected. Thank you for listening.